Let's get into it. Coach Colin here. What's going on, guys? We are talking about simulation theory, mathematical compression, probabilistic reality. We got a Danny Jones clip where they're talking about the simulation, which I find very interesting. Then we're going to discuss something called the 4 layers of, I believe it's called simular. It's very interesting stuff. It takes the concept of the simulation and puts it into the real world. And the way this guy breaks it down, Chase Hughes, is very, very interesting. And of course, we got Joe Rogan, 2 different clips of Joe, his most recent podcast with David Kipping, and then another podcast with Roman, who is deep into simulation theory and really didn't like AI. Really good guy, in my opinion. So we're going to just get real deep. I'm going to be talking about the link between religion and simulation theory, because I think that they're mirroring each other, and they're also yin and yang at the same time. So I'm going to discuss that a whole bunch, and we're going to get deep and weird, guys. And that's what the tinfoil Speedo's for. You get deep and weird. That's where we're going right now. So let's jump into the Joe Rogan stuff, and then we'll jump into all the other stuff. Again, thank you for supporting the Tinfoil Speedo experience. I'm thinking about dropping the experience and just calling it the Tinfoil Speedo. Thank you guys so much for your support. Keep on clicking like and subscribe. It helps the channel tremendously. I'm trying to break out of the Rogan box, do my own thing, because there's some documentary style stuff I want to make that Rogan's just not talking about. Anyway, let's jump right in.
The simulation theory, I'm glad you brought that up, because you're also one of the people that believes in it.
I do.
You do. How do you define it? And what do you think it is? What do you think is going on?
So I'm trying to see technology we have today and project the trends forward. I did it with AI. Let's do it with virtual reality. We are at the point where we can create very believable, realistic virtual environments. Maybe the haptics are still not there, but in many ways, visually, sound-wise, it's getting there. Eventually, I think most people agree we'll have same resolution as our physics. We're also getting close to creating intelligent agents. Some people argue they are conscious already or will be conscious. If you just take those 2 technologies and you project it forward and you think they will be affordable one day, a normal person like me or you can run thousands, billions of simulations. Then those intelligent agents, possibly conscious ones, will most likely be in one of those virtual worlds, not in the real world. In fact, I can, again, retro-causally place you in one. I can commit right now to run billion simulations of this exact interview. Mm-hmm. So the chances are you're probably in one of those.
But is that logical? Because if this technology exists, and if we're dealing with superintelligence, so if we're dealing with AI, and AI eventually achieves superintelligence, why would it want to create virtual reality for us and our consciousness to exist in? It seems like a tremendous waste of resources just to fascinate and confuse these territorial apes with nuclear weapons. Like, why would we do that?
So a few points. One, we don't know what resources are outside the simulation. This could be like a cell phone level of compute. It's not a big deal for them outside of our simulation. So we don't know if it's really expensive or trivial for them to run this.
Right.
Also, we don't know what they are doing this for. Is it entertainment? Is it scientific experimentation? Is it marketing? Maybe somebody managed to control them and trying to figure out what Starbucks coffee sells best, and they need to run Earth-size simulation to see what sells best. Maybe they're trying to figure out how to do AI research safely and make sure nobody creates dangerous superintelligence. So they're running many simulations of the most interesting moment ever. Think about this decade, right? It's not interesting like we invented fire or a wheel, kind of big invention, but not a meta invention. We're about to invent intelligence and virtual worlds, godlike inventions. We're here. There's a good chance that's not just random.
Right, but isn't it also a good chance that it hasn't been done yet? And isn't it a good chance that what we're seeing now is that the potential for this to exist is inevitable? That there will one day, if you can develop a technology, and we most certainly will be able to, if you look at where we are right now in 2025 and you scale forward 50, 60 years, there will be one day a virtual simulation of this reality that's indistinguishable from reality. So how would we know if we're in it? This is the big question, right? But also, isn't it possible that it has to be invented one day, but hasn't yet.
It's also possible, but then we find ourselves in this very unique moment where it's not invented yet, but we are about to invent all this technology. It is a possibility, absolutely, but just statistically, I think it's much less. And I'm trying to bring up this thought experiment with creating this moment on purpose in the future to pre-commitments.
Mm-hmm.
Half the people think it's the dumbest argument in the world. Half of them go, it's brilliant. Obviously, we are in one. So I'll let you decide.
Yeah. I feel like if virtual reality does exist, there has to be a moment where it doesn't exist and then it's invented. Why wouldn't we assume that we're in that moment, especially if we look at the scaling forward of technology from MS-DOS to, user interfaces of like Apple, and then what we're at now with quantum computing and these sort of discussions? Isn't it more obvious that we can trace back the beginning of these things? And we can see that we're in the process of this, that we're not in a simulation. We're in the process of eventually creating one.
So you zoomed out 30 years.
Yes.
Zoom out 15 billion years. You have a multiverse where this process took place billions of times. You are simulation within simulation, many levels over. And to you, even if this was a simulation of those 30 years, it would look exactly like that. You would see where it started. It wouldn't be magically showing up out of nowhere.
Right. So if you're playing the game, in the game you have Newton and Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci, and
well, at least you have memories of those things,
right.
Even if you started with preloaded memory state.
Right. You have Stalin, you have all these problematic human beings and all the different reasons why we've had to do certain things and initiate world conflicts. Then you've had the contrarians that talk and say, actually, that's not what happened, this is what really happened, and it makes it even more confusing and myopic. And then you get to the point where two people, allegedly, like you and I, are sitting across from each other on a table made out of wood, but maybe not really.
It would feel like wood to you either way.
Is it possible that that's just the nature of the universe itself?
There are some arguments about kind of self-sustaining simulations where no one's running them externally, just the nature, but I honestly don't fully comprehend how that would happen.
Yeah, the holographic universe and the concepts of human consciousness has to interact with something for it to exist in the first place.
That's one. Also, if you have infinite universe, then everything possible happens anyway, but it's boring. I don't like this argument.
Why don't you like, that's boring? Why
everything happens. There's I give you a book which has every conceivable sentence in it, and every, would you read it? It's a lot of garbage you have to go through to find anything interesting.
Well, is it just that we're so limited cognitively? Because we do have a history, at least in this simulation, we do have a history of, there was a gentleman that, see if you could find this, they traced this guy, they found 9,000-year-old DNA, and they traced this 9,000-year-old DNA to a guy that's living right now. I believe it's in England.
Mm-hmm. I remember reading that.
Yeah, which is really fascinating. So 9,000 years ago,
all right, so let's get into the next Rogan clip here. Now, I find it very interesting as I talk about, I'll call it religion and the Sims, the spiritual and the logical, that this logical man, Roman, who is a scientist, doesn't understand the concept, doesn't understand the simulation having no intelligent design. It's very interesting how similar these things are. Is very, very interesting to me. Let's jump into the next clip. This is him with David Kipping. Sorry. This is where they're talking a little bit about the simulation theory as well. Let's go.
Kind of philosophy rather than science, I'd say. I did write a paper about it a while ago, and I just kind of pushed back against something Elon Musk said about this. So he said, in a quote, something like, there's a 1 billion to 1 chance that we don't live in a simulation.
Right.
And he was just sort of running the numbers of if they run trillions of simulations, then what's the chance you're in the real one? The problem with that assumption is that you have to assume it's possible to make lifelike simulations. And we don't know that's true. So again, putting my good scientist hat on, once we've demonstrated that is possible, then I will agree with Elon Musk on that fact. But until that has been demonstrated, then I'm just going to give it 50-50 odds. But I love this. I don't know if you've had Sean Carroll on here, I think, before.
Sure.
He's a really clever comment about the simulation hypothesis that I've sort of been thinking about a little bit. Maybe you call it like Carroll's contradiction, if you like. And it's the idea that if we are simulated and we ourselves start making our own simulations in the future, and those simulations make their own simulations, you get this kind of hierarchy. And eventually there'll be some bottom level, because every time we run a computer, it's got a finite amount of computational power. So therefore, the inhabitants of that computer must necessarily have less computational resources than we do, right? Because we could run a whole bunch of them. They live in just one machine. So they only have access to what's in there. So every level has less and less fidelity, less computational power. And eventually you'd get to a level where it was kind of like, Donkey Kong from the 1980s or something, right? Where simulations are just really crappy. For them, it would be impossible to do simulations. So I kind of call this the sewer of reality. There must be a sewer, a bottom level, where you just lack the resources to do simulations. And if you think about it, most civilizations would in fact live in the sewer because of the fanning out of this tree, they would be the most populous type of simulation out there. So then you have this contradiction. And the contradiction is that we most likely live in a simulation that can't do simulations, but we're assuming that simulations are possible. So that kind of
or inevitable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, he just constructed that on his own thought process. Now, I'm going to show you, I'm not, like, I didn't even think of this. I'm going to show you some stuff that looks very, very real. But when he says that one thing would, one simulation or one society or world, universe, whatever, would look like Donkey Kong from the 1980s, that may be true, okay? So let's go on the premise that that's actually true. Sorry, I know I'm interrupting, but still. My show, sorry. Let's go on the premise that that's true. It doesn't really mean that they wouldn't be able to make simulations. It means that they would just look like Donkey Kong from the 1980s. And they wouldn't know that they looked like Donkey Kong from the 1980s. And it wouldn't stop them from creating any type of technology to eventually create a simulation. They would just be what they are. Like right now, you and I may not look like the realest thing when we broaden our horizons towards the spectrum of color that we can't see and all the senses, all the things around us that we can't sense because we just don't have the senses for them. Another part of this is he's assuming that we are as real as it gets. Whereas, let's go into the other realm, whatever you call heaven, fourth dimension, fifth, sixth, seventh dimension. Maybe that's what we look like here. We look like Donkey Kong. It's like, oh, look at them. They're all physical and everything's all hard and they got to clunk these heavy bodies around. He's stuck in this box a little bit, and where it's like the only things that are possible are what we know about. And I've just been seeing too much in my research that shows that there is so much beyond what we know about. There's just so much. I mean, forget about even just the psychedelic realm. It's just there's so much that we don't know about. And we don't know that this is the way everything's supposed to look. Again, you go up dimensions, it might just get to the point where it's just energy and orbs. And we look ridiculous. We look like Donkey Kong. We look nonsensical. We're putting on clothes and buying them, and that could just be nonsense. So, I don't know. I find I poke holes in somebody who's too scientific because they just can't look outside the box. I find that especially in this episode where I'm talking about, people who are very religious and people who are very scientific, they're very much the same, where they get very stubborn in the way that they think. Let's keep going. Sorry.
Yeah, that makes sense. I kind of think about it the same way I think about intelligent life in the universe. We might be the only ones, or we might be the first. It is possible, since we haven't observed anything else. So this idea that we are, the chances, I think he said in billions, 1 in billions.
Yeah.
That we are
it's
not
like a
living
hard number, yeah.
Yeah, someone has to be the first. So how do we know it hasn't happened yet? Just because we think it's possible, I don't buy into the idea that we're definitely in a simulation. But I'm open to it. I'm open to it because it would be indiscernible. Because that virtual reality exists, and if you've used some of the new meta stuff, it's getting pretty good.
Yeah.
But you can tell, but it's getting pretty good. And you can say, okay, Pong to Call of Duty, giant leap, look at the difference, this to whatever it's going to be, and not just haptic feedback, but something neurological.
And the generative AI stuff so impressive.
But here, right here, it hasn't happened yet. So why are we assuming that it's already happened? That seems kind of silly when there's a lot of like demonstratable realities of this Earth, like that show you things are real, despite what we know about quantum physics and the weirdness of subatomic particles and the empty space that really inhabits most things. Mm-hmm. We're here. This is metal. That's ceramic. Makes noises. There's a bunch of rules. It seems hard. It seems firm. It seems concrete and real.
Seems that way.
I'm not totally believing that this is a simulation. I'm open to it, but I'm also saying, well, if we think a simulation is inevitable because it's, human beings are going to figure, right, but maybe it hasn't happened yet. Well, that makes much more sense to me than we had to go through fucking bell bottoms and disco while the simulation was going on. So if the simulation is real, that means the simulation happened back when Gerald Ford was president and back when the gas crisis was. This is all a part of the simulation?
All those memories could be
bullshit. I just woke up.
Right?
I woke up this morning.
I mean, this is kind of like it's a little bit similar to Boltzmann brains. So Boltzmann brains is the idea that, over infinite time, you could just have random particles in space come together to make a brain. It's incredibly unlikely, but like monkeys on a typewriter, there is a chance of that happening. And that brain would have all of your memories. It would, all of the sensations you experience in this moment, but it would only live for a moment. And then it would just randomly fall apart. Yeah. And if you run the calculation, there should be infinitely more of those than there should be things like us. And so this is actually a problem cosmologist.
So it's very interesting. So Joe Rogan, he's kind of running through the same thought process he had with Roman. And this guy's just more accepting of what he's saying, whereas Roman was kind of pushing back and saying, you're not thinking broad enough. And I would agree. If I went with the concept of a simulation being real, you can't go, seems real to me. That doesn't work because that would be the point. That would be the point of the whole thing. You know what I mean? That you wouldn't be able to tell any of this. Everything would look exactly the way reality should look. Total Recall, for those of you that are in my age range, first Total Recall, not this new one. The first one with Arnold. Like, that's what was going on. He was in a pure simulation. And for the younger people that don't know, this guy, Arnold, at the time, he wanted to go on a vacation. And in this timeline, in this movie, when you wanted to go on a vacation, it was something they would do to you in regards to your brain. You'd get an implant and you could be a superhero. You could have whatever lady you wanted. And he went through all of that and didn't realize it. And it's a weird thing where you can't tell what's real and what's not real. And he is a superhero. He is saving the world. So at the end, you don't really know if he's gone through the whole thing or if his life was really like this superhero life. And even as I'm saying it, you actually do realize near the end, it's not said, but you could tell this was the simulation that he wanted to have implanted. So, but there's no scene where it goes back to him and he's like, oh, I'm all normal now, guys. There's none of that. But yeah, you can't just knock on things and just go, seems real to me. That's not enough. Even if I'm not even sure if I believe in the simulation theory, but it's definitely not out of the realm of possibility because, again, when I liken it to religion, it seems like they're saying the same thing. There's a simulation. We're in it. It's been built. It's kind of what's being said in religion. This material world is not the world you're supposed to focus on. And there's a world outside of all this. And it's when your soul leaves this body, this meat sack, you are now going to ascend. You're going to go up. And that's the reality. You know what I mean? So it's saying the same thing. It's just in the simulation world, the people who believe in it are usually very ones and zeros and logical. And the people who believe in religion, they're very faith-based. They have this faith. It's very metaphysical, whether they realize it or not, spiritual, and the two just don't seem to gel together. But in this little thing of the simulation versus just faith in God and heaven, it's very much the same thing. Now we're going to jump into something a little more complex, a little mathematical compression. Now, listen to this. I like the end part. This is where we're going to get a little more introspective and stuff, but take it in. It's a little heady, but I think you'll like it.
Mathematical compression. There's something off about how tidy the universe is. The most complex phenomena, motion, mass, gravity, even time, can all be expressed with ridiculously small equations. E equals mc squared, the Schrödinger equation, Einstein's field equations, not pages of code, not chaos, just compressed elegance. And in nature, that's rare, because randomness produces mess, entropy. But this looks authored. Programmers do this all the time. Instead of manually scripting every outcome, they write one line that generates them all. The code isn't a list, it's a formula, one that scales infinitely, without ever changing its core logic. So if reality itself is running on elegant math, that doesn't prove a simulation. But it does change the strategy. Because in systems like this, brute force never works. You don't fight the system, you reverse engineer it. Start looking for patterns. Stop assuming chaos, because the moment you speak the system's native language, it starts responding. Not emotionally, just efficiently. Number 7, cosmic.
Now, that is what I like about that whole part. When he gets into that last part, I just want to play that again. When he says, don't fight the system. Again, this is somebody who is there. It's a video. It's about the simulation, and they're very ones and zeros logical. But then that part right there really speaks to spirituality, really speaks to life. Let me just play that again.
Don't fight the system, you reverse engineer it. Start looking for patterns. Stop assuming chaos, because the moment you speak the system's native language, it starts responding.
The moment you speak the system's language. Now that is a very interesting thing, because it seems like scripture of all kinds, from all religions, is trying to give you some kind of manual on how to live and what to expect as you move forward and how you access that other place. So it's like when he talks about learning the language, that makes a lot of sense. That goes towards religion a little bit. But then it also goes towards this other place of, I don't know what you would call this, but I talk about stuff like this all the time. You know, you don't fight, and I guess you could link it to religion as well. You know, having faith. You know, don't fight the things that you're going through. Try to figure out what it is you're doing wrong, and change things. Whether you have to change yourself, learn more skills, figure out a negative part of yourself that keeps arising and ruining things for you. You know, you don't fight. Don't fight what's going on. Flow through it. You know, ups and downs of all kinds. I know working on this channel and growing, and all of it was just these ups and downs. And, you know, I'm sure if you're a watcher of the channel for a long time, there was months, I think almost a year or something, where I was just stuck at 89,000 subscribers. And I'm like, what's going on? Like, why is this happening? It seemed like so deliberate. And I was like, and then all of a sudden it was weird. I learned a lesson and I moved forward, and then all of a sudden it changed. The subscribers like doubled in like this wild fashion. And I've gone through it again recently. And I think life is like that. You're not supposed to wallow when you hit a valley. You're supposed to figure out what's going on and have faith that this is just a valley. This is a valley of many ups and downs that you're going to have. And you just have to know that there's going to be another up. You don't fight it. And you learn to speak that language in the sense of knowing that there's going to be these valleys, these low points, and understanding, okay, now I'm at a low point. I understand that I'm at a low point. This sucks, of course, right? You still have feelings. This sucks, but I'm going to keep working as though I'm at a high point, and I know that the high point's coming, right? It's weird. You have to have faith. But the way that he frames it, when he says learn that language, it's almost like he's talking about computer code. And there is kind of an element to that as well when it comes to your own mind, because you do have code that's been written for you. You do have a code that you go by that, you know, I say written for you. I would also say written by you and influenced by the people around you. Parents, family members, positive influences, negative influences. Like myself, I'll be open right now. I have this weird coding where I think I don't deserve good things. I don't know why. And it actually pushes me to work very hard, and it gets me into some pretty good positions, but it doesn't feel good. I always feel like I'm going to lose the good things in my life. That's a coding that I've had. It was just built up from years of just having good things taken away from me, right? But that could be changed. I'm changing it slowly. You have something like that within you as well. And you know what it is. You don't have to tell me. You don't have to say it at the screen right now. You don't want to yell at the screen. It's fine. That's cool. But you know what it is inside. But that's a coding, and that can be, if once you know that there's a native language that is written inside of us, in our heads, in our hearts, in our souls, and you are able to speak the language or read the language or even understand that it's there, you can change it. It's not static. It is very much like code, which is why I like that analogy. I like the simulation, logical, mathematical stuff, because it is a code and you can change it. You just have to think differently. Rearrange yourself, change yourself. It's a simulation, it's a game. Pick a different character. Operate as that new character. You write down the specs of that character. You got 100 strength, you got 100 speed, mobility's good, health is up high. You can actually set that for yourself. It doesn't feel like it right now for a lot of you, but it is possible. I know it is. Anyway, let's jump into Danny Jones talking with Rizwan Virk. Rizwan Virk is very big on the simulation theory. He's written a bunch of books about it, and here they are talking about simulation theory and what all that looks like.
The simulation point. And the simulation point is a virtual reality that is indistinguishable from physical reality because it's so realistic. And two, it has AI characters in there that are indistinguishable from characters that might be controlled by a real person. And we're getting closer and closer to that point. And if we've gotten to that point, then how would we know if we're in a simulation or not? The chances suddenly go up to at least 50-50, because if you can't tell the difference, if you're in a simulated world or not, and this is the logic that led Nick Bostrom, who is a philosopher at Oxford. He wrote a paper all the way back in 2003 called "Are You Living in a Simulation?"
Yeah. What were there was like 4 basic principles of this, right?
Yeah. There were 3 possibilities. He said.
3.
He said if you take a technological civilization. Now he was concerned primarily with AI and how much information would it take to simulate the brain, and how much information would it take to basically simulate the history of a person and all the processing power of a brain. And he said, well, it's not that much in the scheme of things. So therefore, it's possible a technological civilization could get to the point where he called it post-human, which is very similar to what I'm calling the simulation point without so much the virtual reality part. But he said, if it could get to that point, there's 3. Well, first of all, there's 3 possibilities, which we kind of call Bostrom's trilemma now.
Yeah.
The first possibility is it's not possible, or nobody gets there. Anywhere, no civilization ever gets there. So then the chances we're in a simulation are 0, because it's either not possible or every civilization blows themselves up before they get to that point.
Right.
The second possibility, which I think is unlikely, is he says they get to that point, but they don't create any simulations.
Because of moral reasons or something
Yeah,
like
moral
this?
reasons, or they have some laws, maybe they don't want to cause suffering, or there's just other reasons why, and they're banned. So it's a possibility, but personally, if that were true, then the chances we're in a simulation are low, according to Bostrom's simulation argument is what it's called, because there's not going to be many simulations. And then he said the third possibility is we are most likely in a simulation. Okay, now how do you get to that from that? Because the third possibility is that civilization creates a bunch of simulated beings, and then it runs another server and it creates a whole another trillion simulated beings, and then it runs another server and it creates a whole another trillion. So he came up with a statistical argument. He said if there are this many simulated beings, and there's only this many, smaller number, of biological beings that are in base reality, and actually probably simpler to use Elon Musk's version. So what Elon Musk said in 2016 was, assume there's 1 billion simulated worlds and there's only 1 physical world. So what are the odds that you're in the physical world?
1 in a billion.
1 in a billion, right? That's exactly what he said. He said the chances that we're in base reality is 1 in billions in that scenario.
That's so crazy to think about.
Yeah. Now, remember, that was only 1 of 3 possibilities.
Yeah.
So, Bostrom himself didn't know where to put the probabilities for each of these 3 possibilities. But if we can get there to that point where we can create these AI simulated worlds, then you suddenly find yourself in either possibility 2 or possibility 3. Right? And
that's one of the big questions. One of the things that I can't wrap my mind around that I always think about is like the way it was eloquently stated in the 13th Floor movie, where he's like, what happens when one of these guys crawls out the extension cord and finds a way to kill its god?
Right. So this is an interesting question too, because can you escape the simulation?
Right.
And that's kind of what it's asking. And in fact, it's something that there have been rumors that, a couple of billionaires have funded research to try to figure out, is there a way to hack the simulation? There's a few guys out there that have written papers on, can we hack the simulation in some way?
I had this dude, Danny Goler, on here. I think he's the one. Yeah, you know Danny.
Yeah, I know
Danny
Danny.
connected us.
That's right.
Of course, duh.
Yeah.
So he's doing the experiment with the laser and the decode.
Right. He told me about
fascinating
that.
stuff.
And, originally he was saying it kind of looks like katakana, but
it looks like Sanskrit to me.
Sanskrit.
It looks like, if you look at,
have you tried it then?
Pull up, I've done it twice. Pull up the Lord of the Rings, the ring from Lord of the Rings, and you can see the text on the ring.
Right.
That's what it looks closest to.
So I just want to say before you see what that looks like, and shout out to Danny Goler, because I interviewed him as well. Great guy. Mike Blaster set us up. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Eddie Bravo. Yeah, when it's funny when it comes to religion. Again, these things are like mirroring, but also yin and yang, right? Because there are these tech guys who are trying to figure out, how can we hack the simulation? How can we get out of this thing? If it exists, how do we get out? And then on the other side, when it comes to religion, spirituality, well, everybody knows how you get out. Everybody's getting out. As you live and breathe right now, you are going to get out. You're getting closer and closer every single day. You don't know what day it is, but you are going to get out. And it's from passing away. Then your soul leaves this body and you leave, right? And it's just interesting how they both believe, right? If you fully embrace the simulation theory, you fully embrace, spirituality, religion, they both believe that, yes, of course, there should be a way to get out. There's some kind of simulation. We should be able to get out. And on the other side, religion's like, yeah, we're going to get out, definitely. But you have to learn the proper language, you have to do the right things, and then you ascend and you leave, right? And on the tech side, we'll say the tech side, simulation side, they're like, no, it's not like that. Because on the tech side, they don't want to die. They want to take their body with them. They want to escape the simulation and shake their fists at the ones who created it. And say, I am now smart like you. I am now a god like you. I am in the god realm. I'm a god like you, And that's just not the way it works, right? And they would know that. But again, most people on the side of the simulation theory do not have that religious aspect to them, right? I wish they would come together. I think they would be able to figure out a lot of things if they came together. Because, whatever religion it is, the scriptures, the things that are written down, the stories that are said, whatever you want to say, they already detail what escaping looks like, what ends up happening. Maybe you come back, maybe you don't, if you believe in reincarnation and everything like that. But they've already, and again, even think about that towards spirituality, the reincarnation part would even confirm what the simulation people think even more. Because now if you're reincarnating, it's like you're running a simulation again, starting from day one, except now you have different inputs, a different skin color, a different face, a different everything, a different gender, like everything changes. You're a different person. And now you run it again and again and again. And it's said in even religion that is what you do because you're trying to learn lessons. And that would make sense towards a simulation, because what is the purpose of the simulation? Well, it has to be for learning something. It has to be for a teachable type of thing. It can't just be for entertainment. Although there is aspects of life, whether it's you're a tech, logical person or spiritual person, there are aspects of life that are just for entertainment. They are for fun. They are for you to just take in the moments. It's very interesting. So to sum it up, they want to escape. They want no sacrifice. And then religion knows you will not get to know. But the thing is, they want to know, right? Again, mirroring mirroring in their actions and what they kind of believe, but also yin and yang at the same time. It's very interesting. Again, I gotta put together some people who have different belief systems and just like sit them down for podcasts. I think I'm gonna try and do something like that. Let's keep going.
To me. So the first time I did it, I didn't see it. I didn't see the code.
You didn't see the code.
I saw just like crazy patterns rotating in the laser,
Right.
and I could see like a pocket of space. So that's what the code looked like to me.
That-
Similar
that's-
to that.
That's really interesting. And,
Yeah.
and I've heard, from him, and I've heard from others. I know they're trying to work on, are there ways to see this without taking DMT, for example?
Right. Yeah. And the second time I did it, I when I saw it, it was crazy because I saw it through the laser, but it was like I tried going back into it. So I did the T 3 or 4 times, and like the 4th time I did it, all I saw was dicks covered in this code everywhere surrounding me. And I was like, I think something is telling me that I'm pushing my limits here. They're telling me to off. But,
That's great.
Yeah, it was hilarious. Danny filmed the whole thing.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's an interesting question. I mean, many people have told me that the first time they took DMT, or sometime they took it, maybe not the first time, but they started to see the grid lines of the simulation. And I know Danny himself talks about these characters. Is it the insectoid characters? I forget which ones they are, but these beings that he said are like, they're more like admins or managers. They're like bureaucratic people who are just kind of supporting
Right.
the simulation or
Yeah.
whatever you would call that world, right?
Like if you're jumping, like either you're jumping over to another simulation, or you're breaking down there's this brain filter hypothesis I'm sure you're aware of, where it's like all of our senses are basically like vision and smell and touch and taste. That's all just filters. It's filtering out all the stuff that's potentially all around us right now, right? So that we can basically survive and get through the day, eat, sleep, reproduce, drive to work. And if there are, and this is like, I don't know if you've ever heard of Joe Rogan's fart hypothesis.
No, I haven't heard
Oh
of
my
that.
God, it's amazing.
The fart hypothesis.
So just with what they were talking about just now, let me just scoot back a little bit.
That's great.
Yeah, it was hilarious. Danny filmed the whole thing.
When they're talking about the admins, when they're talking about the administrators that there seem to be when it comes to the simulation. Now, Danny even believes that there are these administrators. He believes that they communicate with him, and they actually prompted him to do the whole experiment. So he believes in them wholeheartedly. All he's describing, now I've talked to Danny. Danny's not a religious guy, but all he's describing are angels. He's describing angels. These ones that came to him, because not only did this red laser experiment give him purpose, it also has changed his life, and it will continue to change his life. Joe Rogan wants to try this experiment. He might meet Joe Rogan, be on Joe Rogan's podcast because of this. It's shooting his life into a different stratosphere, right? And what do angels do? They nudge you towards a calling, towards something that completely changes your life for the better. So it's just interesting the way, it's like, well, the logical people versus the spiritual people. Well, there's administrators and they're bureaucratic people who just come along and they're just watching the whole thing. And then the spiritual people, well, there's these angels and they're absolutely glorious and they're beautiful. And they've been watching over you this whole time and making sure everything is just as it should be. And they guide you and they take care of you. And it's all because there's somebody atop on both sides. There's this overall watcher, this overall God. And, it's so funny. And what this really reminds me of, which actually speaks to spirituality, is the firefighter, where I played his near-death experience for you guys in another episode. The firefighter claimed that when he had his near-death experience, he left his body, he escaped the Matrix. And as he was leaving, he said, I can't believe I thought I was that person. And he was talking about being a firefighter, being a husband, being a father. He's like, I can't believe I actually thought I was that person. It was like a dream to him. It was all a dream. And he could not believe, the same way you wake up from a dream and you can't believe it. Same thing for him, where he goes, wow, that was a trip. And he left the simulation. He went to heaven or to the administrators. Again, they're trying to say the same thing, right? It's just it's seeing it like even when you get to the point of hacking the simulation. Well, there is a hack for the simulation. It's called prayer. Prayer and faith hacks the simulation. It's a weird thing, but you can hear millions of people talking about, yeah, I got on my knees, I prayed, and I asked for this, and I asked for that, and I asked for strength, and then all of a sudden, I was in positions. All of a sudden, the game gave me all these situations where I had to be strong, and I asked for patience, and it gave me situations where I needed to be patient, and now I have strength and patience. You know, like, like it's the exact same thing. You're looking to hack it, and then, you know, religion has these hacks. And it's not just, you know, Christianity, but there's a bunch of different spiritual practices, whether it's affirmations or prayer or any of these things that will help you, that are hacking the simulation. But these guys think of it as, no, I'm going to do the ones and zeros, and then it's going to open up and I'm going to get to walk out. And it's interesting because there's a little bit of fear within that. And I said it before, where you want to take your earthly body with you. This is real. This body's real. This is what I have. I don't know about all this soul stuff and this spirit stuff, but this is what I have, and I want to take this with me. So please open up the portal so I can walk through and step into it with this. And it's like, no. That's where they yin and yang, because you don't get to do that. You're going to pass away, and it's going to be scary, and it's not going to be triumphant. It's actually going to be quite sad. And then on the other side, you'll experience what you're looking to experience. Anyway, let's jump in here. Joe Rogan's fart theory, I believe they were talking about. Let's jump back to the fart theory.
The sense of smell in our noses to detect enemies or prey, or, you know, if there's a gas leak or something like this, it's a very relevant sense to us so we can survive. But if we didn't have a nose, we would have no clue that there's these smells and there's these fart odors that are like surrounding us or whatever. So how many senses, or how many things that are similar to that are all around us all the time that we just haven't evolved the sensory organs to detect, you know?
Yeah.
So that's like kind of like that brain filter hypothesis, that the DMT is breaking down these filters in your brain, and somehow you're able to see more of what this really is.
Right. And I think there's validity to that, because I've heard it from now enough people. And, you know, I get into the same discussions about this that I might about things like near-death experiences, or people who do yogic techniques or shamanic journeying. Like, are they seeing something real? Are they seeing just an interpretation of what's real? And for me, the interesting thing about the simulation hypothesis is it's really a collection of 2 or 3 different assertions. And the first of those assertions is that the physical universe is based on information. It's not really physical. And going back to John Wheeler, he had a phrase called "it from bit."
Yep.
And he basically said that when you get right down to it, if everything is 99% empty space, you go down to the atom, it's this weird electron cloud, and you keep going down. At the bottom level, what is a particle? If the world consists of particles, what is a particle? Exactly. And nobody really knows exactly what it is. And he said it comes down to a series of properties that define that particle. It's a series of yes-no questions. And those are bits. A bit is a 1 or a 0, or a yes-no question. And so he said anything that's physical actually consists of bits of information, you know, down at the bottom level. Now, the second assertion is that information gets rendered for us as a kind of reality that we perceive through our senses somehow. And the first part is not really controversial, even with physicists. Like, I met a Nobel Prize winning physicist at the University of Cambridge. And, you know, we were talking about this, and he goes, "Oh yeah, that's not controversial anymore. The universe basically consists of information." Most physicists.
Oh, really?
That's what he said to me.
Wow.
Goes, it used to be controversial. If you go back like 30, 40 years in the 70s, they'll be like, "No, it's not information. It's energy. It's this, it's that." They'll say, you know, that's a valid view of the universe. But, you know, whether it's rendered as a video game or not, or how that happens, that's a big mystery. Nobody knows why it goes from that to what we're actually perceiving. And you get into, you know, neuropsychology, but also I think the video game metaphor works pretty well. And then the last part of that is that the whole thing is a kind of hoax, you know, that this whole thing isn't real, that it's set up for us in some way, and we're limited to perceiving what's outside of it. And that's where these experiences, whether it's DMT, whether it's certain yogic techniques, mystical techniques that allow you to perceive other beings that are here with us.
Right.
And in all the world's, you know, mystical traditions and religious traditions, there's all kinds of stories about other beings that are here with us.
Right.
Like the jinn, for example, in the Middle East.
Oh man, I wasn't even going to bring up demons this episode, but he brought up the jinn, you know? If there is a simulation and there are administrators who are actually angels, there would have to be some kind of demon as well that would be possibly working against us, maybe getting access to the simulation, maybe input into the simulation. It's very hard to tell because at times, and again, going back to the spiritual side of things, at times they are there to actually test you. That's what really happens when you encounter dark forces. They test you. Are you going to give into the darkness? Are you going to have courage? Maybe you've asked for courage. Maybe it's something you need in your life and you don't realize that you've asked for it. And now you're confronted with this thing. For me, when I had my dark experience with this weird demon old hag looking thing in a very odd sleep paralysis, but also, you know, moving around in my astral body, kind of weird. It was a very odd thing that happened. I needed that. It moved me closer to my it deepened me into my spirituality and eventually moved me closer to God. And same thing with, you know, psychedelics. It moved me closer to God, you know, and it's not what everybody needs, but for some reason, it's what I needed. I needed to get shooken awake in that sense. Anyway, probabilistic reality. Let's go.
Probabilistic reality. In classical physics, reality is cause and effect, predictable, clean, logical, but quantum mechanics disagrees. Hard. At the smallest level, particles don't behave deterministically. They exist in probabilities, not this will happen, but this might happen, with a certain likelihood. And until something interacts with them, they remain in a suspended maybe state. This isn't uncertainty from ignorance, it's baked into the system, which should be terrifying. Unless it's not an accident. Because in video game design, probability isn't chaos, it's a feature. Randomness creates dynamic outcomes, replay value, emergent behavior, so maybe you're not in a broken reality. Maybe you're in a sandboxed one. A world designed to respond to how you move, not just what you know. Where possibilities don't collapse until you act. This doesn't mean everything happens for a reason. It means nothing happens until there's a reason, and most people never create one. Number 5.
Not everything happens for a reason, but most things... Let me just hear that one more time.
For a reason. It means nothing happens until there's a reason, and most
Nothing happens until until there's a reason.
people never create one.
And most people never create one. See, now I love that this video, and it's by somebody named, what is it? Chill Dude Light Mode. So I love that it's a very ones and zeros logical type of video. But then at the same time, it sneaks in those little bits, because when you talk about simulation theory, and I've talked about this before, and you start talking about game theory, like as if this is all a simulation, like a game, you know, you have to move forward for things to render. And there's a spiritual aspect to this as well. So we'll start with the game theory, right? You have to move forward in a game for things to start rendering. That's how every game works. You start walking, and then the world keeps on rolling as you keep walking. Life is like that as well. You need to keep on moving forward, and then everything renders. And then the boss comes up, and you have to fight the boss. And there's riches, and there's this, and there's health, and there's, you know, there's downfalls, and there's all sorts of things throughout the whole game, but you have to keep moving forward in order to see more of it. And life is like that as well. You have to move forward. You have to move into things for things to actually start happening. Like if you're driving by a place and you want a job there, the job exists, but you have to go there and actually pursue the job, and then that renders. And it might render in the form of somebody being like, you know, like think of it like a game. Somebody's like, you need a resume. You need one resume. Gimme. And you're like, oh, I don't have a resume. Okay, I'll go back and get a resume. You start figuring it out. And the next thing you know, the job exists. You have the job. You're in there. And before, you didn't know any idea what the facility looked like. But as you walk through it, now all of a sudden that becomes real as well. You know, the spiritual side of that is taking on responsibility. Now, I heard one time from this person, spiritual guy, maybe pastor, maybe priest, maybe rabbi or something like that. But he was talking about how You know, so many people, he's like, people want money for 5 people. He's like, but God looks at them and he just sees you. So he gives you enough money for you. He gives you enough money to survive. But you're not like stepping into anything more, so he doesn't have to give you any more. He goes, but when you step into more responsibility, you get more, right? Like, I'm sure there was a point in time, a lot of you thought, I'm never going to be able to pay rent. And then all of a sudden you move out. And somehow it just worked. And you thought, I'd never get a car. And then somehow it just worked. I don't know if I'll be able to handle kids. How am I going to, the kids are expensive. And then you have a kid and somehow it just works. And it just keeps going like that. Well, it's not by mistake. You are, as you call upon yourself by saying, okay, more responsibility, you figure out how to get more. Or if you want to take the real spiritual side of things, God gives you more. But either way, more comes as you step into more responsibility. As you call on more of yourself becomes available. But if you don't call on yourself, it's kind of like if you don't use it, you lose it kind of thing. That's what ends up happening. Just found that very interesting. Now let's get into this weird stuff. We're 50 minutes in. We're just getting into the really weird stuff. Oh man. All right, let's jump in here. Listen to what Chase Hughes has to say about this.
Self. There's 4 levels of simulacra. This is a faithful, or what you would call true, copy, where the representation is clearly an artifact of a real and unblemished original. So this is a perversion of reality here. So either intentionally or unintentionally, we're distorting the image of the original. They still have a link to the original, but it's been changed. These mask the absence of a profound reality, and they create a facade that looks real or natural, but it's not tied to any original form. These have no relation to reality at all. They are their own, what he calls simulacrum. Here, this line between like real world and the world of simulacrum becomes indistinguishable. You cannot tell the difference between 4th order simulacrum and reality. There's a fascinating story in the book. It's about this tribe called the Ifuago people. When the ethnologists first set foot in this Ifuago territory, they were just captivated by their social systems and these intricate rituals. And the scientists came to document the authentic Ifuago way of life. But here's where things get really interesting. As the Ifuago people became more and more aware that they were being observed, they started to act a little different. Their rituals became way more elaborate and started changing and modifying themselves, and they started wearing a lot more traditional clothing a lot more often. So the tribespeople were now performers, acting out an idealized version of their culture to the scientists. So all of these works that they put were published around the world. So over time, the Ifuago tribe themselves started referring to these academic texts to understand their own traditions. So new generations that are now influenced by these published works adopted these documented customs as the new standard of culture. The line between real and represented was gone. Let me give you another example here of this 4th order simulacra. How is Walmart a simulation? It's this giant sprawling space. It offers everything that you want: medicine, hairspray, clothing, groceries, whatever it is. It's not just a supermarket. It's what this book refers to as a hypermarket. Everything becomes a sign. Everything's a representation of something else. The produce is clean, it's uniform, it almost appears artificial. You go to a farmer's market, vegetables don't look like that. So what's natural is made into something simulated to reconstruct our expectations. But why do we have that expectation? Because we saw it in the media, which was a simulation of that thing. Let's go to Disneyland. It's not just...
This is getting really weird. I gotta be honest. Are you keeping track? I don't know if I'm keeping track. I tried to take notes for a second. I was like, the 2nd layer linked to the original, 3rd layer looks original, but no connection to the original. This is very, very odd. Chase Hughes is amazing, but is Walmart a simulation? Or the things that we see around us a simulation, but not in the sense of like Matrix simulation? but they've been simulated to us. You know, the aspect of vegetables is really good. Because like you ever see what a banana really looks like? It's really small, it has these big thick seeds. And then they engineered it to make it look bigger, different, no seeds, right? So we could eat it. It was better. I guess that's a simulation. I guess that's how he's referring to that being a simulation. And I guess that does make sense. And maybe he'll touch on this, but I guess that's kind of how Instagram is, right? This is me. I'm the banana. This is me when I'm on the couch chilling. I am the banana in its actual form. But then there's a re-engineered version of me that's on Instagram and on YouTube. And not really, because I'm really like this all the time, but you know what I mean? Like what we see on Instagram isn't the real banana. That's the engineered banana that's sitting in Walmart. Oh, man. All right, let's keep going.
Just an amusement park. It's a super intensified simulation of aspects of the world that we inhabit. In their bluntness, as an overt space of fantasy and commerce, it becomes more honest than the outside world that pretends to be real. So Disney World serves to camouflage that the rest of the world is also a stage. It's also artificial. If you ask a random person to draw a picture of a princess, what will they draw? That's our definition of real. That's in your head. You define what a princess is based on a simulation. The simulation takes over around age 2 or 3. So the hyper-real becomes more important than things that are actually real. Think of your social media profile right now. It's supposed to be a reflection of you, but how often is it a carefully curated presentation for all of us? So the you on social media, with your complexities, your flaws, they're all smoothed out.
Okay. So now I get this part of what he's talking about. It's like politicians. You never see the real politician. You're always just seeing the engineered, curated version of them. You never see the real version of them when they're talking. It's always some weird manufactured, curated, very planned out version of themselves. And then how many aspects of the world that we see every day are like that, right? Now, I don't know. This might be closer to what a newscaster should be than anything. I'm kind of just by myself. I'm clicking the things. There's no editing going on except for like I mute out swear words and stuff. But I'm just here talking and I take my notes as I'm like watching the thing. But when you watch an actual newscaster on TV, it's very curated. When you watch the news, it's a curated version of the world. How many other things are like that? You go out, when you're working with people, your colleagues, you're seeing a very curated version of them. So it's almost like a simulation within a simulation, if you're going to take the simulation as a real thing. Whew. See, this is where it gets very, very odd. I'm going to stop with the Chase Hughes video, but if you want to watch it, definitely check it out. Chase Hughes. It's called This Isn't Reality, and I'll Prove It. Really well-made video. I think this guy's really cool. He's been on Joe Rogan's podcast before. Look at us. We're like an hour in, guys. I mean, I'm just going to play this one. I think we're going to stop it here, but let's listen to this.
Ever notice how the moon is always facing the same side toward Earth? Or how stars don't twinkle in space? Or how, for some reason, the universe seems to get blurry the farther out we look? Here's what that might mean. Not everything is being rendered at once. In a game, the system only generates what the player needs. The more active the area, the more resources it gets. Background elements stay low res until you interact with them. It's called dynamic rendering, and it's efficient. Now ask yourself, why haven't we found life elsewhere yet? Why does deep space look like a painting? Why is it that the most unprovable theories are the most resource-intensive? Maybe it's not empty out there. Maybe it's just idle. And here's the twist. If the simulation renders based on activity, then your actions matter more than your beliefs, your movement, your curiosity, your input. They might not change reality, but they might decide how much of it you even get access to. If you never ask, the system doesn't answer. And if you stay passive, the game stays on pause. Number 4.
There you go. See, now again, that's exactly what I was talking about before. You know, whether you want to say the system or you want to say God, if you're not moving forward, nothing is going to render for you, which means nothing is going to happen in your life. And the things you think are static, like it would be in a game, are not static. We have a little bit of a different twist than a regular game, than a regular simulation. We have the ability to actually change things within ourselves whenever we so choose. And then the more we pursue, the more we can get. It's all very odd. This is all very, very odd. But I hope you put on your tinfoil Speedo. If you didn't, you're standing there just wearing slacks and you don't know what to do with yourself right now. And that's not my fault. That's your fault. You didn't take this seriously. You should have took it seriously. When I say, listen, tinfoil Speedo sounds funny. Okay, I know, right? I made it up. I'm the one that made it up. I know it sounds funny, but it is necessary when you come to this channel. Okay, guys? Anyway, I just wanted to bring that to you guys really quick. And are you in a simulation right now? And again, if you're in a simulation or if you're in a realm that God has made and he has structured all this, either way, if you pursue more, you can get more. And at any time, when it comes to the code that's in here, you can change it. But first, you have to know what code is holding you back currently. And then you got to change it. Okay? I'm out of here.